Ladies, I'm back! I've finished my read-through of the OG Dragon Ball manga, and I've also gotten over my Pokemon Champions addiction. Now that I'm done with that, I've put together 3 rankings for you guys. This is the first of those rankings, covering Goku's boyhood saga, which goes from the start of Dragon Ball up until the end of the 21st Budokai. As always, this is a manga-only ranking, where I'll take guides and external statements as secondary sources when needed. I'll be limiting entries on this list to actual combatants and breaking them into tiers A through F. If you'd like to see the next rankings as soon as they come out, as well as the Dragon Ball Super manga rankings, consider subscribing. The first of those rankings should be releasing within a week or 2 of this video dropping, and only 2% of you guys are actually subscribed, so you'd be joining a pretty select group if you did click that button. Now, on to the rankings. You can think of F tier as the characters that have shown a willingness to fight but are mostly untrained baseline humans with some amount of skill, or they just have a weapon and can use it. That's what lands Mai at 15th place and Launch at 14th place. Both of these women are skilled with firearms to some degree and have shown a willingness to use them on others, with the main differentiator between them being Launch's proven ability to outmaneuver other human opponents with guns and her overall being way more trigger happy when she's blonde. You could also probably put Bulma in this tier, though she never has been shown or stated to have any training with guns, just a willingness to shoot random kids in the woods. E-tier characters have some degree of enhanced physical ability or some other trait that makes them more difficult to deal with in a fight for a normal human. The Bear Thief qualifies for this tier through his sheer size and aura, scaring a firearm-wielding Bulma away with her believing that Goku had no business fighting the thief after seeing him tank bullets and one-shot dinosaurs. While beginning of series Goku does fodderize this guy, I'm choosing to interpret Bulma's fear of him as him being resistant to bullets, and add the fact that he is just a giant bear with armor and a sword, and he makes a strong case for setting the foundation for E-tier and settling in at 13th place. Despite him having possibly the strongest hacks in this part of Dragon Ball, I'm putting Monster Carrot at 12th place. He showed some degree of superhuman agility and durability, being capable of leaping over long distances, dodging strikes from Goku, and surviving a whack from him. Though, Goku wasn't trying to kill him at this point, as he needed Carrot to transform Bulma back into a person. Where most of Monster Carrot's weight as a threat lies is with his main ability. He doesn't need to touch you with his hands to turn you into a carrot, so if you punch him or just brush up against him, you become a carrot. The only counters to this are the use of a weapon, like Goku did, or likely just being powerful enough to kill him before he can turn you into a carrot. We do also have a statement from Toriyama that Carrot survived the moon-busting Kamehameha from Roshi, which runs in complete contradiction to what we see from his durability in the manga, so unless we're upscaling held back beginning of series Goku to moon level, no, we're not doing that, then this bit from Toriyama falls closer to a gag statement and shouldn't hold much weight for actual scaling. Still, Carrot has some decent durability, some really good agility, and a broken hacks ability, making him more than deserving of the 12th spot in the ranking. Shu only gets this high in the ranking because he has a peel-off machine, which is basically a dorky-looking tank with arms and legs. He's the only one that has this in the manga, which is why Mai isn't in a similar placement. This machine grants him some degree of superhuman strength, ranged weaponry, and the ability to fly, though given the durability of more advanced peel-off machines, this thing would probably go down from any attack from a decently strong character, which we have at least 10 of. 11th place. 10th place goes to Chi-Chi, which is something I never thought I'd say. She's largely a helmet merchant, with her blade being capable of decapitating a big dinosaur, and the laser being powerful enough to engulf it in flames and scare beginning of series Yamcha. She even managed to lodge the blade in Roshi's head, but this is most definitely a gag feat and shouldn't be taken into consideration. Unless you want to. We're never shown anything that she can't cut with the blade, so if you want to say that she can threaten 21st Budokai level fighters with her helmet, go for it. Way more reasonable than arguing Kid Buu above Buhan. Joking, of course. No, I'm not. Fuck you. Her physical stats aren't too bad either. She can survive running into a mountain on Nimbus and took a pretty nasty hit to the back of the head from Yamcha, with her only being knocked out for a bit without any serious injury. She could also punch Goku off Nimbus, the same guy who was one-shotting giant bears with his punches and throwing cars. Her only real limits are her reaction speed being kinda bad, seeing as how Yamcha blitzed her, and her lacking any real martial arts training at this point. Still, it's clear that her helmet is a pretty crazy ranged weapon, and she has some degree of physicality beyond that of normal humans, possibly due to one of her parents being a 13-foot tall brick of a man. Makes you wonder if Ox King's genetics influenced Gohan's potential at all. D-tier characters are truly skilled in martial arts and represent some degree of superhuman potential beyond that of the characters in E-tier. This is the bare minimum tier to be considered a serious fighter. Right above Chi-Chi and barely making it into D tier, we have Ranfan. She was the only female qualifier for the 21st Budokai, whose success was largely attributed to her seduction techniques, which tracks for a manga made in the 1980s. However, we see in her fight against Nam that she didn't rely on any powerful seduction techniques in the prelims. She mostly flirted with her opponents and showed a little skin, and that was somehow enough for her to win out over world-class martial artists. This kind of points to her having some real skill, or at least physicality, which is strengthened by her performance against Nam. She was able to harm him with her strikes and avoid strikes from him, even when he was explicitly viewing her as his arch-enemy. I guess seduction techniques do nerf your opponent in Dragon Ball, but there's no way she was nerfing her ops to the point that they were reduced to trash tier martial artists. There must be some legitimacy to Ranfan as a fighter for her to make it this far. Narratively speaking, Ranfan is definitely portrayed as the weakest of the qualifiers in a straight fight, but I could see her pulling off wins against those ranked higher than her due to her seduction hacks. Jesus Christ. Ox King's manga feats are non-existent, so we only have aura and vibes to scale this guy off of. In some ways this works in his favor, as we don't have the bit of him completely failing to tag beginning of series Goku from the anime, but it also makes it kinda weird for me in where he should be placed. Oh, but what about his power level of 900 in that one movie pamphlet? Thank you, Strawman. The Tree of Might pamphlet is an affront to God and should be burned. If anyone cites it at you, just laugh in their face and walk away. At best, that pamphlet only holds weight for the specific movie continuity of Dragon Ball that the Tree of Might exists in, and that's it. Ox King's only accolades are being a legendary fighter known worldwide for his battle prowess, and being Master Roshi's second best student, self-proclaimed of course. We can infer that he's superhuman to some degree, likely breaking that human barrier that Roshi talked about, but that's all we really have to go on. At the same time, he lacks the talent to use the Kamehameha, or the power to endure or extinguish the flames that covered his home. Though given the fact that Roshi went into max power mode for that, I don't really hold it against him. At the end of the day, we just don't know how strong the Ox King truly is. He could very well be in the top 5 or top 3 in the ranking, but without throwing a single punch, I am most comfortable topping him out at 8th place. C tiers aren't so different from D tiers, their main differentiator being more legitimacy to the threat that they pose. Ox King could either be in this tier, the next two above it, or the one below it. It's really up to you. I think he's kind of like in a weird middle spot, if I'm being honest. Sitting at 7th place, we have Yamcha. He did some training of his own after separating from Goku and somehow grew so strong that Goku still held his power in high regard, despite he himself having trained with Roshi and starting out stronger than Yamcha. Regardless of his gains, he effectively got no diffed by Roshi, having his Wolfang Fist completely blocked and getting knocked out of the ring by a strong gust of wind that Roshi made. Interestingly, Goku said that he didn't think anybody could beat Yamcha that easily, which is actually really common phrasing in OG Dragon Ball. You'll have someone step up to fight one of our guys, usually Goku, and they'll be beaten with the rest of the cast saying something along the lines of, "I knew he'd win, but I didn't think it would be this easy for him." Being generous, this means that Goku thinks he'd have to put some effort into beating Yamcha, and given his performances against Nam and Giran, this leads me to believe that Yamcha is not incomparable to these guys and could likely put up some type of resistance, though he would most definitely lose in the end. Another thing about Yamcha is that he can seemingly sense the battle spirit of others and uses this sense to get an estimate of his opponent's strength. I think Roshi does the same thing in this arc, but it's neat that Yamcha seems to have this ability without any crazy training. Yamcha also very obviously loses to Ranfan despite being above her in the rankings. Bacterian is the 6th strongest character in Dragon Ball. His gamer aura was enough to significantly nerf Krillin in their fight, despite him not having a nose. While Krillin was fake smelling him, Bacterian had a clear advantage over Krillin, harming him with his strikes and had a real shot at winning up until Krillin touched some grass and realized he didn't actually have a nose. At that point, Krillin kicked him once, which didn't do much damage to him, then shamelessly copied Naruto by ripping ass in his face, Naruto v Kiba style. Somehow, the fart did more damage to Bacterian than the kick. Realistically, Bacterian's probably trash as a fighter, and Loki has comparable, if not worse feats than Ranfan. But his gamer aura is stronger than her seduction, to the point that I see him beating anyone but the strongest fighters of the arc. I'd call B tier the can give Goku a decent fight tier. If you can provide a decent challenge to Goku, then you belong here. Kriller earns his 5th spot through his performance against Roshi being vastly better than Yamcha's, to the point that he forced him to put in some effort and pull out some tricks, like the Kamehameha, to stay in the ring. Yamcha himself places Krillin on another level beyond him, which should already be more than apparent due to Krillin's superior training under Roshi and his rough relativity to a tailless post-training Goku, albeit being weaker to some degree. Krillin's most intense feat in this arc is him fighting Roshi at such an intense speed that no one could keep track of their movements, to the point where they had to pause the match and give the audience a long play-by-play of their exchange. A far cry from Yamcha's bout with Roshi, and even Goku's fight with Nam, if I'm being honest. Still, we know Krillin's limit at this point, and the people above him have better performances against Goku than he would have if they fought. Giran's a weird one. Physically speaking, I don't see him being any stronger than someone like Krillin, despite him being a massive dragon. He managed to harm tailless Goku with his attacks, and most notably completely restrain him with his merry-go-round gum in a very Buu-esque manner. Goku could not avoid this attack when Giran pulled it off, despite being on guard, and was only able to break out of the gum after regrowing his tail and gaining a buff. Due to the speed of Giran's gum and its ability to restrain a post-training Goku, Giran stands as a very dangerous one-trick pony that can more than likely dog on anyone at or below tailless Goku's strength, which happens to be everyone below him on the list. 4th place. Nam's really freaking strong. He fought on relative terms with Goku, who had regrown his tail at this point and put real pressure on him, to the point that his Heavenly Cross technique briefly knocked him out. Nam is clearly superhuman, being able to jump several hundred meters into the sky and land without any damage to himself. As a fighter, he's also incredibly skilled, focusing on targeting pressure points to maximize his effectiveness in combat, as well as possessing a form of rudimentary ki sensing, shown by him sensing Goku's presence with his eyes closed to dodge his afterimage attacks. Even Roshi holds his strength in high regard, thinking that he could possibly lose to Goku after seeing him beat Nam, lending further proof to the idea that Nam sits at a relative, although lesser level to the top dogs of the verse at this point. A tier is the can beat Goku tier. If you can beat Goku, you make it in this tier. Goku's strength in this arc is nearly unmatched. From the beginning, he was noticeably above everyone around him, only ever losing fights due to hunger or being outsmarted. After his training with Roshi, he grew by leaps and bounds that was only made more apparent after he regrew his tail. Even this early in the series, Goku is a monster. He holds a level of physical dominance over the rest of the cast that is impossible to ignore and shows immense creativity and potential in combat. He copied the Kamehameha and afterimage techniques after seeing them once and devised valid counters to techniques like Roshi's Drunken Fist. He even turned himself into a mini tornado that was too much for Nam to deal with and would have led to a ring out if Goku didn't get too dizzy. Against Roshi, Goku showed himself to be his near equal in combat, clashing evenly with him in their exchanges and nullifying his Kamehameha with his own. He only really lost out to Roshi in terms of experience, height, and techniques. For all of Goku's strength, he did lose to Roshi 3 times in their fight. The first being when Roshi hypnotized him and Bulma had to bail him out by yelling that it's dinner time. The second being when Roshi had him dead to rights with his electricity attack and he got bailed out by transforming into a great ape. With the third being at the end of the fight where they were both gassed out and Roshi narrowly won due to his longer legs. Still, the narrative treats Goku as someone at or approaching Roshi's level, even if he still lost in the end. Really, all he's lacking is height and experience. Goku does have access to his Great Ape form at this point, which would make him 10 times stronger, but it is highly situational and not something that he can consistently access or even use consciously. And even then, I don't see him being number 1 in the ranking. For the only time ever, Roshi is the strongest character in Dragon Ball. His fight against Goku proved that he is more than a match for him physically, while possessing a depth of techniques and experience that Goku would be hard-pressed to match even into his adulthood. Unlike Goku, Roshi's transformation is something that he can enter at will, and grants a massive buff to his damage output. At this point in the series, it's shown that characters like Roshi and Yamcha have some form of ki sensing, enough to gauge the combat potential of their enemies. As a side note, Roshi is also able to suppress his ki at this point, which is pretty neat. Anyway, Roshi and Yamcha can sense ki to some degree, and when Roshi entered his max power form to confront Great Ape Goku, Yamcha believed that he was going to kill Goku, with Roshi not contradicting that belief, instead pointing out that he targeted the moon instead of vaporizing Goku, like Yamcha and Krillin believed. In the past, I've claimed that this made Roshi relevant to Saiyan Saga characters due to him being able to kill Goku, who at this point should be in the hundreds power level-wise, before becoming 10 times stronger as a Great Ape, but I forgot how many times characters grow by several times in OG Dragon Ball, and the non-linear nature of power levels in the series. While max power Roshi isn't going to be threatening Raditz anytime soon, he probably does still get at least a 10 times buff in this form and has one-shot potential against characters that are relative or stronger than himself. Of course, he only gets one chance to land a shot in this form before he gets nerfed into the ground due to exhaustion. Luckily, against the characters in this ranking, he doesn't even need to pull out his trump card to win. And that's the ranking. I have the full tier list on the screen now. Dragon Ball is a really good read, in many ways better than Dragon Ball Z and Super, and in other ways worse. mostly talking about the poorly aged jokes and tropes in that regard, which I won't get into because this video is about power scaling, not a review of the manga. I should have a Super ranking dropping soon that covers the beginning of Super up to the Universe 6 tournament, so you should definitely sub for that if you still haven't. I also have some other Dragon Ball related vids in progress, as well as some more meta power scaling vids in the works. Drop other series you'd like to see covered in the comments below, as well as your own thoughts on the ranking, and yeah, that's all. See ya.